Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel again. This is a USB stick and it's a Arch Live ISO installation USB stick, and this is USB stick where we are going to install Arch Linux. It's always nice and cool to have a portable installation of Arch Linux, and this is what we're going to do in this tutorial. So let's get going. So I started up my machine here with the two USB sticks. One is for the Arch ISO and the other one is the USB stick I want to install Arch Linux into. So I already installed the OpenSSH so that I can log in the SSH to show you the bigger terminal, and now we are ready to install Arch Linux here. So as usual, if you don't have a US keyboard, you might need to change the keyboard layout. The Arch ISO boots up with the US keyboard. So if you don't have the US keyboard and you need to find out your keyboard layout, you can type in locale ctl and then list -keymaps and then the pipe symbol, because we want to use the grep function to narrow down the search. Now my keyboard is a Swiss keyboard, so its connotation is CH. So I'll type in here CH and hit enter. And I have several results here, and the one I'm looking for is the first one. So to put that into the system, I can type in now load keys and then the string. So DE_CH-Latin1 and hit enter. So this is done, so we can clean up the terminal and we need to check for our internet connection. So I'll type in IP space A, and I have two interfaces here in my laptop. One is the Ethernet interface where I have already an Ethernet cable connected, and it has an IP ending with 122. So if you have a cable in your computer, you should be able to go and you don't need to do anything else. However, if you want to use Wi-Fi and you don't have a cable, we need to set up also your Wi-Fi adapter. So let me clean up the terminal. Now, since the July ISO, we have a new procedure for this, and I made a video about this that you can check out in the channel. And the first thing we need to do here is to type in iwctl and hit enter. Now we need to find out the adapter name, which we saw shortly before, but if you don't remember it, we can type in device list and hit enter. Now the name in my case is WLAN 0. Now the next step would be to scan for networks. So we can do this by typing in station and then the name of the interface, so WLAN 0, and then scan and hit enter. Now to get the list of the networks, we can type in station and then the name of the adapter, so WLAN 0, and then get-networks and hit enter. Now we see a list of networks here. I can select actually mine, which is the first one here on the list. So to connect to this network, I can type in station, again the adapter name, WLAN 0, and then connect, and then the name of the Wi-Fi network, which is in my case EFTech5. And when I hit enter, I will be asked for my passphrase. Once you enter that, you'll be connected to Wi-Fi and you will have an IP as well. Once you're connected to the Wi-Fi, the only command you need to type in here will be exit to get out of this small utility. And we are back in the root ISO. So let's clean up the terminal. And the next step will be to take care of our mirror list, because we want to make sure that we have the fastest servers available when we download packages. So to do this, we need to download a package called Reflector. And to do this, we can type in pacman-syy to refresh also the servers, and then Reflector and hit enter. Now proceed with installation by hitting enter, and Reflector is installed. Now we can use it to create our mirror list, and we type in Reflector -C for country. So you would basically type in your country. My country is now Switzerland. If you have countries like United Kingdom or United States, you might want to put those between single quotes so that the program interprets this as one parameter. And then -A for the age of the servers. I'm going to go for 6 hours. And then --sort. We want to sort the servers by speed, so rate. And then --save. We're going to save this information under /etc/pacman.d/mirrorlist and hit enter. Now we can refresh the servers one last time. So let's type in pacman-syy and hit enter. And now we are set to go. So let's clean up the terminal and type in lsblk and hit enter. Now this is the scenario. We have SDA, which is our Arch ISO here. We have SDB, which is around 115 gigabytes. This is my second USB drive where I want to actually install Arch Linux. And then I have my internal drive in my PC, which is an NVMe drive. Now I will not care about this one in this installation because we want to install Arch Linux on SDB. What is extremely important when you install Arch Linux on a removable device is when we then create the fstab file or the file system table, we have to use the UUIDs and not the partition name. Because as a removable drive, in this computer it's called SDB, but the moment you plug it in another computer, it can be called SDC or SDD, depending on how the computer is configured. But the UUID of the drive remains always the same, so it's very important to use UUIDs when you're installing Arch Linux on a removable device. Now, I want to install Arch Linux then on STB, and we can choose to install it as a UEFI system or as a MBR system. It's really up to you how you want to do that, but in this tutorial, I'm going to use the UEFI system because nowadays it's probably one of the most common scenarios. So let's proceed, and we need to first create our partitions. So to do this, because I want to create a GPT label, I'm going to use gdisk. So I'll type in gdisk and then /dev/sdb and hit enter. Now, I want to create a new partition, so I'll type in n for new and hit enter. Partition number 1 default is fine. First sector's default is also fine. And I want this partition to be 200 megabytes. Now, keep in mind, this depends, of course, a lot on the size of USB stick. This particular USB stick is 115 gigabytes, so it's pretty large, and I can create actually quite easily partitions. For my EFI partition, I'm going to go for 200 megabytes, so I'll type in +200, capital M, and hit enter. I need to define now the code for this partition, which is EF00 for our EFI system, and hit enter. And now I can create my root partition. Now, you can create also a home partition if you'd like to. Of course, as I said before, it depends how big the USB stick is. In my case, I want to actually create only a root partition. So I'll type in n for new and hit enter. Accept the defaults for the partition number and the first sector, and also for the last sector, because I want this partition to take the remainder of the disk, so I'll just hit enter here. Now, the code for this is fine because it's a Linux file system, so I can hit enter here. And now we can write the changes to the disk by typing in W and hit enter. Confirming by typing yes and hit enter. It might take a moment, there you go. And now the operation has completed successfully. So we can clean up the terminal and type again lsbrk. And as you can see, now we have SDB1, which is 200 megabytes, and SDB2, which takes the remainder of the disk. Now we partition the disk, we need to format the partitions. So let's begin with SDB1. Since it's a EFI partition, we need to format it with a FAT file system. So to do this, we can type in mkfs for make file system. So .fat and then -f32. So it's a FAT32 file system type. And then /dev/sdb1 and hit enter. Now we need to format also the root partition. Because we are installing this on a removable device, the procedure here will be slightly different. As also it's mentioned in the Arch Wiki, we need to always keep in mind that flash drives has a limited number of writes. For this reason, it's in this case a better solution to create a file system type without journaling, because a journaling file system will take some of these writes as the journal is updated. So what we can do, we can take the journaling off from the file system and eventually configure systemd journal to store the journals actually in the RAM. And this is what I'm going to do in this tutorial. So to format the second partition, we can type in mkfs and then the ext4 file type, so ext4. And we're going to specify here the -o option. And we want to basically remove the journaling feature of the ext4 file type. So to do this, we type in double quote, then the caret sign, and then has_journal, and then the double quotes again, and then the partition name, which is /dev/sdb2, and hit enter. Now, I had already a file system in here before, that's why I'm asked to remove it eventually. You might not see this, but in my case, I type in Y and hit enter. And the format is now complete. So we can clean up the terminal. And once I will be in the installation after cherooting in, I will create a configuration file for systemd journal. Also because of the same reason about the writes in flash drives, I will not create also a swap partition or a swap file. So we formatted the partitions and now we can mount them. Let's begin with our root partition. So let's type in mount /dev/sdb2. And we're going to mount this under /mount because it's our installation directory and hit enter. Now we need to mount our EFI partition into the boot directory, which is not existing yet. So we need to create that first. So let's type in mkdir -p because I want to create actually two directories. So /mount is already existing. I want to create /boot and /EFI, and then we can hit enter. Now we can mount our EFI partition in here. So we can type in mount /dev/sdb1, and then we're going to mount this under /mount/boot/EFI and hit enter. There you go. Let's clean up the terminal and type in lsblk. And we can see here our mount points. So SDB1 is mounted in EFI and SDB2 is mounted under our mount directory. So everything looks good. We can proceed by installing the base packages. Now let's type in packstrap/mount, and we're going to install the base package. I'm going to install also the Linux package, which is going to install the latest Linux kernel. And I'm going to install also Linux-firmware, an editor, in my case Vim, and then we can just hit enter. Now this is going to take some time to download and install, so I'll be back when it's done. So the packages are now installed, so we can clean up the terminal. And now we need to generate the file system table for our system. So to do this, we can type in gen fstab -U. Again, we are using the UUIDs of the partitions. And this is very important when we install Arch Linux on a removable device. And then /mount. And we're going to append this information to /mount/etc/fstab and hit enter. Now let's have a look at the fstab file by typing in cat/mount/etc/fstab and hit enter. And as you can see here, we have the UUID of the root partition, its mount point, file system type options, and file system checks. And the same goes for the boot partition. So everything looks good. We can clean up the terminal and enter the installation and leave the ISO installer by typing in arch-root and then /mount and hit enter. Now let's proceed by standard commands here. We need to work first on the time zone. So to find out your time zone, you can type in time date ctl list-time zones, and then the pipe symbol and the grep function to narrow down the search. In my case, I'm looking for the city I am in, so Zurich, and hit enter. And this is the time zone I need to put into the system. So to do this, I can type in ln-sf/user/share/zone-info/Europe/Zurich. And we're going to link this information to /etc/local time and hit enter. Now we can synchronize the hardware clock and the system clock. So we can type in hwclock-sys2hc and hit enter. Let's clean up the terminal and work on the locale.gen file. So let's type in vim/etc/locale.gen and hit enter. Scroll down to look for our locales. I'm looking for English US here, which is down here. And we're going to select the one which has UTF-8. So we just need to delete the hashtag, and then we can save the file and exit Vim. And we can generate the locales now by typing in locale-gen and hit enter. Now we need to put also the locale into the locale.conf file. So we can type in vim/etc/locale.conf and hit enter. And we can type in lang, all capital letters, equal en_us.utf-8. And we can save the file and exit Vim. And if you chose also the key map at the beginning of the video, we need to put this also in the vconsole.conf file. So let's type in vim/etc/vconsole.conf and hit enter. We're going to put in here key map equal the key map you chose. So in my case, it was de_ch-latin1. And we can save the file and exit Vim. And now we can work on our hostname. So let's type in vim/etc/hostname and hit enter. We give a name to our machine. I call mine Arch USB. Then we can save the file and exit Vim. And we can work also on the hosts file. So let's type in vim/etc/hosts. And I'll move down here to the empty space and type in the IPv4 address, which is 127.0.0.1, tab, and then localhost. The next line, ::1, the IPv6 address, tab, and then localhost again. And the last line, 127.0.1.1. Our host name, in my case, it's Arch USB, what I chose before, .local domain, a tab, and then again, Arch USB. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. Now we can give a password to the root user. So let's type in passwd and hit enter. Enter the new password. and retype it. And now we can proceed by installing some extra packages for our system, the grub bootloader and some other networking tools. So let's type in pacman-s. The first package is grub. And because it's a UEFI system, in this case, I want to install also UEFI boot mgr. I'm going to install also network manager and also network-manager-applet. Two packages for FAT file systems. One is mtools and also DOS fs tools. And I want to install also reflector and also git so that we can install also programs from the AUR if we need that. I'm going to install also base-devel and also linux-headers and some packages for the Bluetooth adapters. One is blues and also blues-utils and our printing system cups. And the last two packages are xdg-utils and xdg-user-dirs. And then we can hit enter. Accept the defaults here and proceed with installation by hitting enter. Now again, this is going to take some time to download and install, so I'll be back when it's done. Now the packages are installed, so let's clean up the terminal. Now before we proceed by installing grub, we need to take care also of our mkinitcpio.com file. In a normal Arch installation, we wouldn't do this because normally it's done automatically, but because we are installing on a removable drive, we need to actually move two hooks in this configuration file, and this is necessary to allow booting on multiple systems, each requiring different modules in early user space. So to do this, we can type in vim/etc/mkinitcpio.conf and hit enter. So we need to look here for the hooks section, which is down here. And we need to basically move the block and keyboard hook before the auto detect hook. So let me go here and I'll type in here block and keyboard. And I'm going to delete them here from this side. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. And now we need to generate the init-cpio, so we can type in mkinit-cpio-p and then Linux, and hit enter. Now it's going to take a moment here to create the images. So this is now done, so we can clean up the terminal and proceed by installing grub. The installation of grub is slightly different because we are installing on a removable device. So we can type in for a UEFI system grub-install-target equal x86_64-UEFI and then --UEFI-directory equal, you remember the boot directory for me was /boot/UEFI and then --bootloader-id equal grub. And the last two options we need to specify here is one --removable and also --recheck. And then we can hit enter. There you go, installation finished. Now we can generate the configuration file for grub. So we can type in grub-mkconfig-o. So the output goes under /boot/grub/grub.cfg and hit enter. And this is done, so we can clean up the terminal and enable some services in our system. So first, network manager. So let's type in systemctl enable network manager and hit enter. Let's enable also Bluetooth. So I pull up the last command here and replace network manager with Bluetooth. And also our printing system cups. So I'll pull up the last commands and replace Bluetooth with org.cups.cupsd and hit enter. Let's clean up the terminal and create a user for our system. So let's type in user add -m and then wheel and then the username, in my case my name, and hit enter. So the M switch is the home directory and the G means that we are giving actually a supplementary group to the user Hermano in this case. And the group name is wheel, which has to do with the sudo privileges that we will configure in a second. But first, let's give a password to the user. So let's type in passwd and then the username and hit enter. Enter new password and retype it. And now let's type in editor equal vim and then sudo and hit enter. Scroll down here until we find the wheel group we just talked about, and we pick the one which has the line all equal all, and we delete the hashtag here. So every member of the wheel group will now have sudo privileges. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. So let's clean up the terminal. And this is done for the basic installation. Now we need to reboot the machine. Before we do this, let's type in exit. We need to go back to the ISO. And now we can unmount all the partitions by typing in umount-A and hit enter. And now we can reboot our machine by typing in reboot. And once you hit enter, you'll need again to select your USB stick from where you want to boot your system. Once you boot from your USB stick, you should be able to see the grab bootloader. Just select Arch Linux and at the login prompt, enter the username and the password we just created, and I'll meet you back there in a second. So I booted up the machine here from my USB stick and everything went well. I saw grub and now I started the system. And the first thing we want to do here is to check for our internet connection. But first, let's switch to the root user by typing in sudo su, enter our sudo password, and clean up the terminal and go to the home directory and type in IP space A. Now, because I have an Ethernet cable connected to my machine, I have an IP here ending with 117. If you want to have Wi-Fi, now you can type in NMTUI and hit enter. Go to activate a connection and then select your network, in my case this one for example, and then enter your password, and once you hit OK, you'll have an IP as well. In my case, I have already an Ethernet cable, so I don't need to do this. And we can clean up the terminal. And the next step is to configure the systemd journal configuration file to tell the system to store the journal actually in the RAM. And this is because of the reason I mentioned before, to avoid too many writes on the flash drive. And let's proceed by creating first the directory we need. So let's type in mkdir /etc/systemd/journal_d.conf.d and hit enter. And now we can create our configuration file by typing in vim/etc/systemd/journal_d.conf.d, and the file name is going to be, in my case, usbstick.conf, and hit enter. Now we will enter these lines. This you will find it also in the Arch wiki, and I will put a link to this, of course, in the video description. So we need to define the journal parameter, so a square bracket and then journal, close the square brackets. In the next line, we're going to say storage equal volatile. And in the last line, we will say just runtime max use equal. We can specify a maximal value that we want to define here. In my case, I'm going to go with the Arch wiki recommendation, which is 30 megabytes. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. So there you go. This is done. So we can continue installing our system. And the next thing will be to install our graphic driver. So we are installing here on a removable device, and the Arch wiki recommends not to use any proprietary drivers for this installation. That means if you have an AMD card or an NVIDIA card, to install open drivers. So the Arch wiki recommends to install several drivers so that when you boot up in a certain computer, they're going to be used automatically. So I'm going to install all of them as per the Arch wiki. So I'll type in pacman-s. The first package is xf86-video-vesa. The second package is xf86-video-ati, and also xf86-video-intel. I'm going to install also xf86-video-AMD GPU. And the last package is going to be xf86-video-nouveau. And then we can hit enter. Accept the installation here by hitting enter. It's going to take a second here to download. There you go. Let's clean up the terminal. Now the Arch wiki points out the fact that it might be necessary sometimes to disable KMS for several reasons, such as, for example, getting a blank screen or a no signal error from the display, especially when using some Intel video cards. And to disable the KMS, we need to add actually a no mode set as a kernel parameter. Now I tested it out, and in my case actually it's working also with KMS enabled, so I'm not going to do this in this tutorial. But if you want to disable KMS, what you need to do, you need to edit the grub file by typing in vim/etc/default/grub and hit enter. And you will have to go down here to the grub command line Linux default, and at the end of the line here you will have to type in no mode set. and save the file and exit Vim and regenerate the configuration file for grub. So if you're experiencing problems, as the ArchWiki mentions, disable KMS this way. If not, like in my case, I will just let it as it was, and I will just quit out of this file. And now we can basically proceed by installing the graphical environment. You can decide here whether you want to install a desktop environment or a window manager. It's really up to you. And of course, it depends also what packages you want to install and how big is the USB stick you're installing to. So I want to install, for example, a very light configuration of KDE. So in my case, I'm going to type in pacman-s. First, the display server. So in my case, Xorg. And the display manager is going to be SDDM. And the packages I want to install are Plasma, and a terminal, in my case console, and also package kit-qt5. And I'm going to install also a browser, in my case Chromium. And that's going to do it for me. Of course, feel free to add more packages if you have enough space in your USB stick, and then we can hit enter. We can accept the defaults here, and then we can proceed with installation by hitting enter. Now, again, this is going to take some time to download and install, so I'll be back when it's done. So the packages are installed, so we can clean up the terminal. Now, the last step is to enable our display manager. So to do this, we can type in systemctl enable SDDM and hit enter. Now, basically, the installation is now finished. So we can type in exit, and we are ready now to reboot our machine. So let's type in reboot and hit enter, and you can again boot from your USB stick. And if everything went well, you will be greeted by SDDM. Now, this is a USB stick, so you might expect different boot times, as the USB stick might be also a little bit slower, so it might take also a little bit time to display the display manager. So be patient if it takes a couple of seconds to boot up, and I'll meet you back in the KDE desktop in a second. So we are here on KDE on our removable drive. The installation was successful, and as you can see here, the system is working fine. So let's search for the info tab here. And you can see here it takes the RAM from the computer and also the graphics driver and the Intel processor as well, but we're using our USB stick. Now, one point is very important to remember: because we disabled journaling on our file system, it's very important to shut down the computer correctly, otherwise you might have data loss because journaling is disabled. So let's say, for example, you're creating a file. So I'll create, for example, a text file here. I'm just going to call it test, and I'm going to put in here some informations. And I don't have any editor, so I'm just using Vim here, but I'm going to type in, for example, just test USB, and I'm going to save the file and exit Vim. So if you want to have this information saved on USB stick, you need to power off your computer without pulling out USB stick. It might sound obvious, but it's just good practice to remember that we are working here on a temporary system. So if you want a file saved on your system, because we disabled journaling, it's very important to shut down your computer properly. Otherwise, everything will result in data loss. So this is how you can install Arch Linux on a removable drive with a UEFI system. I'm going to do another video about MBR, but the procedure is going to be very similar to this one, except for the grub bootloader installation. So there you go, this is how you can install Arch Linux on a removable drive. There are several steps which are different from a normal Arch Linux installation, which makes perfectly sense since we are installing on a removable drive. But the installation is pretty simple and it's actually pretty reliable. I'm using this now since already a couple of days on my laptop and it works flawlessly. If you try this installation, let me know how it goes in the comments below. I'm always very curious to know how it went for you. I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the like button below and subs to the channel if you haven't already. Subs always helps us out. And if you want to support our work, you can do so by visiting our Patreon website, or you can donate via PayPal to our website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.